12 long years had passed since James Coulter's hands had known the warmth of another soul. Living alone in the harsh Arizona wilderness, he'd made peace with solitude, or so he believed. His world consisted of nothing more than weathered cabin walls, the familiar weight of his rifle, and ghosts from a past he refused to resurrect. The desert winds carried his only conversations, and memories older than the ancient oaks served as his sole companions. Then, fate shattered his isolation in an instant. She emerged from the forest like a specter fleeing from nightmares, her bare feet bloodied by stones, her body draped in what remained of torn fabric, perhaps once a curtain, maybe a garment. Raw scratches painted her arms in crimson streaks. The desert sun had split her lips, and behind her gaze lurked horrors that would haunt lesser men. Without warning, she crumpled at his doorstep. No cry escaped her throat. No introduction offered, only two desperate words whispered as she pressed that tattered cloth against herself. "Please don't." Time suspended itself. Though blood barely marked her skin, her entire frame shook as if she'd escaped an inferno. When he moved closer, she recoiled but remained. The fabric shifted, revealing what made his blood turn to ice. Someone had transformed her back into a canvas of agony burns, raised welts and scars twisted into deliberate patterns. Letters and symbols carved deep, as though another human had signed their cruelty into her flesh. James staggered backward, not from the wounds themselves, but from recognition of that defensive curl, the way broken spirits learn to vanish within themselves. Suddenly, Tennessee flooded back. The war, another girl with identical shattered eyes whom he'd failed to rescue. He'd abandoned someone once before, vowing never to repeat that mistake. Moving with deliberate care, he removed his coat and draped it around her like an unspoken vow. Questions could wait, action mattered now. Lifting her gently, he carried her away from whatever pit of despair had released her. For the first time in countless years, purpose coursed through his veins. Little did he realize the tempest had only just begun. Inside the cabin's warmth, Arizona's night air still carried winter's bite. After her ordeal, even gentle breezes might feel like daggers against damaged skin. He settled her carefully onto the narrow bed against the far wall. She offered no words, made no attempt to adjust her covering, simply drew inward while clutching his coat as if woven from sanctuary itself. James asked nothing. Questions might shatter whatever fragile trust existed, and honestly, he wouldn't have known where to begin. So he did what solitary men do when language fails. He coaxed flames to life in the old stove. Not for warmth, but because crackling wood gave the silence a pulse, she remained motionless except for darting glances that swept the room, expecting devils to burst through at any moment. Every sound beyond the walls made her start. Even gentle wind against wooden shutters seemed to rattle her bones. Coffee became his refuge, bitter and stale but occupying restless hands. He positioned himself at the worn table, stealing glimpses toward her still form, confirming she continued breathing, continued existing. Yet something in her grip on that coat suggested surrender hadn't claimed her completely. Deep in the night, she stirred slightly. Her head turned, eyes finding his for one heartbeat. No words passed between them, no emotion displayed, just human recognition. A spark of life flickering beneath layers of trauma. He nodded like a soldier who'd seen trenches and understood when silence served better than speech. She turned back toward the wall. Dawn brought her first utterance. "Water?" He offered the cup slowly, avoiding sudden movements. She drank without sound, then held his gaze longer than before. That look carried no plea for assistance, no gratitude, just one simple declaration: I remain. What James couldn't foresee was this: that single word, that careful sip would trigger events no flame, no weapon, no amount of quiet could halt. Conversation came sparingly, the following debrief responses. Careful nods, hesitant glances as she tried determining if he represented reality or another cruel illusion. But that afternoon, while he repaired a damaged chair leg on the porch, she emerged and settled on the steps beside him. Initially, she offered nothing, just stared into the forest depths. Then, as if speaking to the wind itself, confession began. They forced me to polish their boots. James continued carving, showing no reaction beyond a slow nod. Her story unfolded. an unofficial mining operation hidden from maps, where humans were worked beyond breaking and punished when they shattered. 2 escape attempts had failed. The first earned her a broken nose. The second left her back scarred like carved leather. He didn't inquire about the third attempt's success, sensing that tale required stronger days. Just as sunset painted the pines gold, hoofbeats shattered the Peace Rapid, ascending the ridge trail. Standing quickly, James grabbed his shotgun and motioned her inside. She froze momentarily, then moved with practiced urgency. The approaching rider bore no resemblance to honest ranch hands. He appeared more like a corrupt businessman who'd lost his fortune and blamed innocent victims. Beneath his fancy vest and oiled mustache lurked undisguised malice. He called her name. "Ellie Rose, you've got one opportunity to return quietly." James descended the porch steps. "She's staying put," the stranger sneered. "That's not your decision, old man." The shotgun's metallic click reminded everyone whose territory this was. The rider didn't draw his weapon, merely spat into the dust and wheeled his horse around. But his parting glare conveyed one clear message. He'd return with reinforcements. Long silence followed. James sitting motionless with the weapon across his knees, watching shadows deepen among the trees. Later, he penned a message to a badge-wearing friend just in case, if you're still listening. You're like James needing to discover what happens next. Trust me, you'll want to witness it. If you haven't already, now's the perfect moment to subscribe because the real battle is only beginning. 3 days crawled past not peaceful quiet, but the tense stillness preceding storms. James stayed close without explanation, though Ellie understood his vigilance. He abandoned his usual routines, instead cleaning that shotgun like preparing for war. Then it arrived. Late afternoon brought unnatural calm, no birdsong, no insect hum, just hoofbeats and dust clouds on the ridge. 3 riders approached, clearly not ranchers or lawmen. They rode with the confidence of men who never asked permission. James stood in the doorway, Ellie behind him holding her breath. The familiar face from days before led them, this time not for negotiation. "Step aside, old-timer." James didn't budge. The second rider's hand drifted toward his weapon. James didn't hesitate. His shot dropped the man screaming to the ground, blood pooling from his leg. The others froze, startled but not fleeing. A calm voice cut through the tension. "I'd consider your next move carefully." From the tree line emerged a man wearing a sheriff's badge, rifle ready. Abram Hale, James's war companion, now territorial law enforcement. Abram's gaze swept over each rider. "This is my jurisdiction, and she's under official protection now," the wounded man groaned. His companion cursed, but none reached for weapons. They departed slowly, but departed nonetheless. Later, James asked how Abram knew to come. Abram smiled. "When you send a note reeking of gunpowder and regret, I know it's serious. If you think this marks their final encounter, you might want to stay. Some stories don't conclude with gunfire." They commenced their dust settled and quiet returned, but different now. Not oppressive or haunted, simply peaceful enough to hear one's own breath without resentment. Ellie stopped hiding. Though loud noises still startled her and nightmares occasionally struck, she now joined morning coffee rituals. She drank slowly, helped gather kindling, asked about the stove. Small gestures but meaningful when returning from despair's edge. James noticed changes too. How she gazed through windows with increasing duration each morning. How she once produced barely audible laughter, faint but present. He remained uncertain whether he was healing her or she him. Perhaps it didn't matter. One evening she arranged wildflowers by the window. He said nothing, but the next day swept the porch clean for the first time in years. They never discussed love or labeled their connection. But one night, over stew and black coffee, she looked up and asked, "Do you think some people exist not to rescue others, but to provide space for self-rescue?" James didn't answer verbally, just nodded. Speaking might have released the wrong words, and so it continued. 2 souls, 1 cabin, gradual healing requiring neither permission nor explanation. But consider this. How many people like Ellie suffer in silence right now? How many Jameses sit alone believing their stories have ended? Sometimes everything changes with one choice, one kindness, one moment of refusing to walk away. So I ask you, which character are you? The one fleeing or the one who stands firm and opens doors? If this story touched you, show your appreciation. Perhaps share it. Let it resonate within you. And if you want more stories like this, authentic ones, unpolished ones that linger in memory, go ahead and subscribe. Because out here in the frontier, stories never truly end, they just keep writing.